So let me show you why things don't work. Let's say, because here in the filter query, ideally I would like ask the user to provide a lot more information because it's not like I want to filter the list. I mean, obviously I do want to filter the list, but it's not like I want to filter it based on one metric, right? I wanted to write, uh, like it says here, show me beginner yoga classes under 50. So you see, obviously, show me is irrelevant. Beginner is relevant because it's a tag. Yoga is also definitely relevant, and then the classes under 50. You see, so the model needs to understand concept more or less below or above. So currently our API does not support that even, but it's relatively simple thing to do. Currently we can only filter based on exact matches, right? So a typical query could be yoga for $25. That would be like the next level of queries that we want to support. But of course, explaining guys on the backend that we want to do ranges, or we want to say beginner and advanced, or beginning or advanced, would work. Here we go. Actually, it worked pretty good because we have the yoga and 25. But in order to know if it works properly, we have to look into the networks here. So let's repeat that again. What are we sending is this is another thing, like we're literally sending like a prompt. It's not like necessarily bad, but it needs to come with proper structuring. So here, um, sorry, we will send the prompt in this basic version, but then we have to see if it maps properly. Actually, I'm pretty surprised it does. But it could also be related to the fact this prompt is not very visible, but it could be also, you see, we sort of like explain it here. We keep this yoga idea in the beginner, and this example can create like overfitting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove it for now, just for the purpose of you know what? I'll try to break it. So let's just say I don't care about the yoga. I care about spin, um, and I care about the price. And let's see what does it produce. So of course I'm calling the generate endpoint, and then the response will tell me a lot. Okay, because it returns a lot more. But you can see here, class type spin, okay, and then the price 32. So it generalizes pretty well, actually. Of course, the name spin is not something that is a class type, because when you look at, I'm trying, let's look at the general thing. You see the class type is Pilates, hit. How is it called actually? Begin, right, class type. Cycling. It's called cycling. But you see, the name says spin, and me as a user, I wouldn't care. So ideal situation would be to map the word spin into cycling in some way. Of course, without touching the backend. So there is quite a lot of things to do, and let's look into how it can be done. So the reason why it generalizes pretty well is because we give examples, and as I mentioned, this is one of the last things normally you would do. So let's make it here and remove it for now. The response is pretty important, but raw is not so important. I might surprise you here. And then the rules only include properties that's very vague. So this prompt is not so good, even though we keep the structure. So quite a few things that we have to look into. And one and most important is this response. We have to tell, because we're not using like this, like, if I would be using like LangChain or something, they already handle things for me. in terms of the structure output and providing the schema. Here I don't. I just mentioned that I want the JSON output, right? But I have to put an effort into explaining the exact schema. So we can say return only a JSON object with following schema. And then we have to provide like, oh, sorry, it's because it's, yeah, okay. And here I would provide an actual model that I can take from the shard. Here we go. I can provide all of it, or I can choose only the relevant ones. Let's see. I'll start simple. Okay. Obviously, I don't need the read-only. ID is not needed. Title description, not so much. Image not needed. Class type, sure. Difficulty, price. Let's keep it for now, like this. And of course, it has to be JSON, not TypeScript. You could use TypeScript, but yeah. And here it would make sense that we also explain, we can use comments explaining that, or we could write it here inside. The models are pretty good into understanding this. So let's just say string that maps into, you know what? I think one of the problems is that we consider that a string, but it's really enum. So we could improve our model quite a lot because it's not really a string. Sorry, where is it? Here, the class type. It's pretty fine. If we look into the stub data in API, and then if we compare things like class type, we have 24. So we have yoga, HITT, Pilates, cycling, strength, yoga, HITT, barre. That's weird. Barre basics. I don't know what it is. Maybe there is some training needed. Again, yoga, cycling, HITT, Pilates, and so on, right? So what I can do, I can ask LLM to take care of it. And since this is like a data processing, I don't want to contaminate my main thread. I can just create temporary agent just for that. So I can tell it very clearly. This is a type, this is a data that I'm using to stub my responses. Please read class type and provide all available options or values. But I'm pretty sure it's gonna understand. I do it to, I can create in enum or I can just provide it in the prompt. Here we go. This is all I need. Now I can retire that agent and come back here. And then in my rules, because it's pretty much a rule, I can explain some properties have specific values that you must use all the time and nothing else. For example, class, and then we can name it class type, and then we can say we don't need to worry about all this strings, and it's not a JSON really. Okay, band strength, cool. So this is what we want to take. And then here we're gonna say string. Yeah, we can also do like this, which is also pretty useful. We sort of repeat a situation, but this is more like on the rule, on the rule level, and this is like the exact thing. It's okay to repeat it. quite often. We can also provide things. Uh, so, sorry, provide things. I mean, we can also provide more explanation about doing the semantic analysis. And if I say something around yoga, I need to pick one, right? But let's see how model behaves if I do those simple changes. So let's just say I say spin, and it's going to do the class type spin, or is it actually reason around available options? I can see it's sort of reasoning. Okay, it failed for, but it saw the cycling. There is some, obviously, we should instruct the model in this situation that not all the options are possible, but because we have mentioned this, return only JSON with following schema, we should add an option for undefined, or explain that each part can be missing in the following schema. No, so return only JSON object with the following schema. However, choose only the properties relevant to the query, meaning it can be missing properties if you are unsure. I can put it to the new line so it's easier to read. Okay, so with that being said, let's say I do spin. Sorry. Here you go. Cycling, spin and sweat, Friday spin, spin and sweat. Pretty good, right? I mean, sure, it's just the beginning, but what I wanted to show you that two things really. One, providing examples might lead to overfitting and forcing generalization. And instead of, usually you should do it at the end when the model is not performing the way you want, or when you want to fine tune it for like edge cases. That's very useful. And then allowing, like explaining the model, not only the format, but also the allowed options greatly uh, um, improves it, the accuracy. There is one more tiny thing I would like to add without making a new part of the video for it. Is this your helpful assistant? What this is not good enough, right? What some people would do in this situation, they would try to put the model into the mindset of the human that they try to replace or they try to automate, right? And it's mostly fine, but I find it not very useful because then the model might start acting and answering like a person, and this is not what I have here. Like the role has to give a context on for the task. You have to think this way. The role is not about setting the tone. It's about getting the model to like select part of the pre-training data and the fine-tune data that will help it to develop the task, right? So what is our task? You need to map a user message into a valid JSON object that will, so you're not a desk clerk in the reception, because clerk in reception doesn't know what's JSON object and doesn't know what are the query parameters and doesn't know what's API. I mean, unless it's technical clerk, but that's not very common, right? So you don't want to say your helpful gym assistant. I mean, it's obvious. You want to say actually bring the model down on the level of tooling, because this is not an entire system. This is not an agent to whom I'm creating the chatbot and I'm talking to it and I can have a various discussion about my training. No, it's a tool agent. It's a tool prompt. It has only one job, map to JSON. And this stuff I could remove the context of yoga and HITT and change it into, I don't know, programming courses, or I could change it to cinema tickets, and this should still work. So I need to generalize the role. So the way I want to say is, I want to say you are a query parameter builder based on natural language. That's what I really want. And that should pretty much work pretty good. You need to map user message or you need to extract the meaning of a user message and con convert that into a valid JSON object that will be used as query parameters to the API. That sounds pretty straightforward. Only include properties that are relevant in the query. We sort of like repeat this here. So I would say maybe not gonna improve a lot, but some properties have specific values. This is a good rule set. Rules. Yeah. And here's the user message. Continue predicting the token, right? And sometimes, pretty often, you can say, here is the answer. So answer in JSON. You know, now the model sort of like understands the entire context and knows that predicting is about to start because it will predict the next token. Okay, so let's go again and let's say I have HIIT. I don't know if it understands the acronyms. We can check it out. Or if we say Pilates, I'm not sure what would be what strength and conditioning. So I would say, let's say I use the word force. Let's see. I would expect some words around the proper gym. So HITT, bootcamp, blast, quick. Okay, so it didn't do the weightlifting. How about if I do it like this? Sorry. Yeah, so it did understand that. What if I say cardio? I want to do cardio. Yeah, it didn't understand. You see, it mapped class type cardio, but this is an sort of like we call it negative example because it's not in the list. So we have to deal with that as well. You can do it by obviously not all the time you're gonna make it in one go, right? Sometimes you have to create like a validation, and one of the best way in this situation would be to make a second call with validation error to the model and append all the stuff the user said and say map that into something different, right? That is a better way. But of course you can also mention, for example, uh, instead of repeating, we can say must use only the following values. Must map user intent into, maybe this will help. But again, it's deterministic. Very often I will see that people will write prompts and create those exception rules and so on. And like, it's much easier. Dealing with exception is much easier by providing examples. That's my point. But if this doesn't help, I would say, yeah, I would say I would drop it at this level. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, let's look at what we can do about it.